Hello everyone, welcome to my cloud introduction session. I am Mahesh Kumar. I am a cloud architect and DevOps expert. I have been migrated a multiple application from on-prem to the cloud and designed a cloud native architect for the application. We enable DevOps practice for the organization so they can automate their uh, workflow and repeatedly they can develop the application. So I would like to share those experience with you guys, but before starting, I would like to introduce you about the cloud computing and the services which are available inside the cloud. After completing this process, can follow the same thing from your end, and you will be a master on the cloud. Moving to the next part, after you require some resources to work on a cloud, there should be a desktop or laptop on your hand. The next one on that system, there should be a Microsoft Azure PowerShell or Azure CLI should be available. After completing this presentation and like in the development part, we have to use those resources. We will develop one application. So that's why we needed a Azure Microsoft Visual Studio. So you can do the .NET coding on it. Mm, That's what we needed. And the most important part, you needed a active Azure subscription. Without it, we can't practice anything. For the Azure subscription, there is a two ways you can get. First one is a trial version available. So you can enable the trial that is available for the 30 days. In the next one, if you are a student, then Microsoft come with a benefit that's called a student benefits. So you have to avail it. It's available on a GitHub link. I will share those link in my description. Going to the next one, and that why the cloud services and resources required for the computing. That there are different kind of patterns that's generated in an organization, and on that basis, the organization can decide where they need to and which application they should be migrating on a cloud. So the first one is a on-off pattern. Here for the certain time, the application on a goes on a idle stage. There is the best example of it. It is a kind of a batch job. So after running for a day, it will go inactive stage, and after toward it's moved to the again the execution step. So this is the real time of example of a batch pattern. The next one is a growing fast. You know, like in a organization, there are multiple startups. They start to doing their business in the initial phase. In the initial state, there might be a low traffic, but after as they are grown, traffic is increased in a repetitive way. So that's why the scaling of the resources also required, and this criteria is also suitable to move those applications on a cloud. The next one is a unpredictable bursting. I can give you the one example where like on a Flipkart, if there is any peak billion day sale or any kind of sale is going on a live website, that time the load of that server is increased repetitively for a certain period of time, and after completing that sales, it goes down again. So for such kind of unpredictable busting, we we have a auto scaling feature on a cloud. So that's we can enable, and we can pay what resources we are using, and even the end user doesn't know like how the backend service is working, how many of the clusters are running. So it's knowing the load very smoothly on a cloud. The next one is a predictable busting for the certain time. Like let's give you one example in India. On our daytime, the traffic on the website is high, but at the night it's slow. So that is the one scenario where the application need to migrate on a cloud and they can utilize the cloud benefits. In terms of this all, clouds come with a different kind of benefit and services that we'll discuss in the next slide. The kind of services available on a cloud, and which is the right for you and for the your organization. So in a cloud computing, we have basically three kind of service. One is a infrastructure as a source. Second one is a platform as a service. Third one is a software as a service. In a infrastructure as a service, the infrastructure thing like the compute engine and networking, that all resources has been provided by the cloud provider, the cloud vendor, and you just have to configure the your OS. You have to manage the OS and the other stuff on that infrastructure. After that managing, you can host your application on those services. The next one is a platform as a service, which is mainly designed for the developer. So developer don't have to manage the OS level patches and update. They can mostly focus on their application development part, and they can easily host their application on a resources, on a cloud resources. The next one is a software as a service, where the application itself provided by the vendor, cloud vendor, and you just have to utilize those applications. The good example of such software as a service is Microsoft 365. We can say OneDrive is also come under the Microsoft 365. You just have to use those services without managing any underlying resources or without having anything. So that's everything managed by your cloud provider. So moving to the next one, where we will discuss actually how and which services we have to host on a cloud and the type of management of those services. If suppose that services you have your on-prem environment, so at the on-prem environment level, you have to manage the infrastructure, the OS level things, virtualization, and at the end, data and the application. Everything has to be managed by the organization and the end user. But if suppose there is any failures occur, then you are the responsible. It is a it's increase the downtime of the resources if anything outage happen, or at any level, whatever it might be, a networking, storage, virtualization, OS, might be sometime the Windows update it itself take a lots of time updating the patches of Windows, and if there is a hardware failures occur, then your application goes down. So this is the one scenario where user itself managing their all the resources. The next one is the infrastructure as a service, where the networking, storage, service, and virtualization, these things provided by the cloud vendor. You just have to manage the OS, middleware, runtime data, and your application. You can do the development, and whatever thing you want to host, you can host on that on the infrastructure resources. So the good example of the infrastructure as a service is your VM, where the infrastructure part is managed by the service provider, and you just have to manage the OS, middleware, and your application and data, every stuff that's is managed by the organization. The next one is a platform as a service and software as a service. In a platform as a service, we are only responsible to manage the application and data. We don't have to know about the OS, runtime, middleware, and networking. We don't have to do anything with that service that is managed by the vendor. We just have to mostly focus on the application design and data of those applications. So the good example of it, uh, Azure Web App, Kubernetes, and like Azure Kubernetes, and there are lots of services that we will discuss after completing this presentation. I will show you on that Azure portal itself. The next one is a software as a service. As I said earlier, everything is pre-built and pre-designed by the vendor. You just have to use those resources at your end, and it could be anything, any application which is available nowadays, that is a software as a service. You are paying for the subscription for the certain period of time, and you are utilizing those resources like those. application. So Microsoft Azure itself is deployed around the world because without the data center, cloud is nothing. Anyway, somewhere the data center and the servers are available to run the application and manage the storage thing. Microsoft Azure involves the concept of region, which is where you select to place and run your code. Each region has a Microsoft Azure data center on the depending on your nearest region. You can select the data center, so it's increase the frequency of the accessing the application. And also it's in India we have a three data center like in Mumbai, Pune, and Chennai. So you can easily deploy your resources across this region. For the certain services, it's not available on that particular region. It's only for that paid user can avail those services. But in a free subscription, you can deploy your resources on any particular region. And also, want to share one thing. Once you build an application, you can choose any location in the world where you want to run it, and you can move your workload from one region to the another region. That is possible on a Microsoft. Even if your user are based on the multiple continent, then you can host your application across the multiple region. Just you have to redirect those traffic to the particular region, and that thing we can manage. Like there is a services available, so you can manage with those redirect those traffic to the particular region, and that thing we can manage. Like there is a services available, so you can manage with those services. So this is all about the cloud region of the Microsoft. And moving on to the next one, where you can understand the actual benefit and charges which is Azure provide. Azure provide pay only for what you used, like whatever resources you deployed. So only for those resources you have to pay. Next one, like VM is chargeable on the basis of minute. If suppose you deployed your VM you are not using, so you are saving the compute cost, and you will be a payable for that storage and whatever resources you uh, acquire to create a VM. So that's will be payable. Microsoft come with a benefit that's called the Azure reservation. So in the reservation, if you reserve an compute resource for a particular year and period, so you will get a certain amount of discount on your bill. In a pay as you go, it will be the your bill is calculated on the month basis. At the month end, you will receive your actual amount, how much money you have. So Azure itself come with a different kind of services. As I earlier said, it is a providing infrastructure as a service and IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS. The cloud service, it's would be something new for you, but there are certain subscription, billing management, and the role assignment. This all things come under the cloud services. Is app services? It's for the platform. It's used for the hosting your application. You just have to build and design your application. You don't have to manage the underlying infrastructure and the OS patches, other stuff. You just have to deploy and the application, and you can use it. And virtual machine is a IaaS service where mostly you can manage the underlying OS and middleware kind of stuff. You have to do the patching and updation of the OS. It's provide a more flexibility as compared to the app service. There are certain applications that those application require some kind of other application dependency. So that dependency you can manage with a VM. That thing we'll discuss later on the next slide. Now here I would like to introduce about the Azure App Services. On Azure App Services, you can host different kind of application like a web application, API, mobile app, and a logic app as well. But yeah, it is it was in a preview, but now it's come under the public list, so you can utilize the logic app. It's based on the no code development strategy. you just have to drag and drop the resources and you can utilize those services. Over the other hand, on a Azure App service, you can host your GUI application as well. Any kind of application, whatever, a different kind of tech, just like if you developed a .NET, Java, Python, any tech application you can host on a Azure Web App. Now moving to the next one, here we discuss about the cloud services. Microsoft Azure Cloud Service is nothing but a resources which available that you can manage inside the Azure cloud. It's a kind of a role provider, worker role ability to mix together multiple roles and you can combine it and assign to one a particular services. Any service cannot be accessible without any access role to the other user. Even that service itself cannot access the other service on the same environment. You have to assign a certain role to for that particular service, and after the role assignment, that time only that service can access the other resources. There are packages that's available on a Azure side. Also, like the Azure configuration is also can be combined in a binary file, and you can utilize to deploy the same configuration on a multiple environment. And that is a one possibility. Even if you are working with an app service where you hosted your services and you want to set a configure a auto scaling for that, that's also possible. And that time it's using a Azure cloud service to auto scale those resources. And this cloud services also you can avail with a virtual machine, classic template. And if you are remember, like we have a ARM template, Azure Resource Management template. So in that template, we can configure such a such a thing. So you can easily create a multiple resources, and it can be you called as a it could be called as a code as a service. Now, in this, I would like to explain you that high level view of the virtual machines. In a virtual machine, it's a virtual machine. It's not itself a single resource. It's contain a multiple resource. There is a virtual network which is needed to communicate with the outside of the resources or the environment. The second one is that storage. Like if you deploy that virtual machine somewhere, it's need to store the data file and the log file. So for that, the virtual machine needed the blob and the file storage service. And the next one is the load balancer. If you host your application, your VM on a multiple region, so managing the load on that server, you have to enable the load balancer. And the network security group is kind of it's providing you access to uh, manage the ports on that particular VM. So you can configure it on the basis of requirement which port should be open and which should be closed. So this is the high level diagram of that Azure VM, and you can deploy the same thing using an ARM template. I will share the ARM template with you after completing the hands-on, so you guys can have the idea on it. So here two VM we will deploy it, and it is a kind of VM scale set, and this storing all the data on a blob storage, and the request come from the load balancer on this load uh, from the public IP to this load balancer, and this load balancer will transfer it to the on a different VM. So this is how it will be work. I will demonstrate this thing on our hands-on session. So as of now, we are good with that. I hope you like this presentation. Please share it with your colleague and give me your feedback so I will improve the content. Thank you.